Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Purport. In this chapter, Lord Krishna answers different questions from Arjuna, beginning with, what is Brahman? The Lord also explains karma, fruitive activities, devotional service, and yoga principles, and devotional service in its pure form. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains that the Supreme Absolute Truth is known as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. In addition, the living entity, the individual soul, is also called Brahman. Arjuna also inquires about Atma, which refers to body, soul, and mind. According to the Vedic dictionary, Atma refers to the mind, soul, body, and senses also. Arjuna has addressed the Supreme Lord as Purushottama, Supreme Person, which means that he was putting these questions not simply to a friend, but to the Supreme Person, knowing him to be the supreme authority, able to give definitive answers. Arjuna Vacha, Kim Tad Brahma Kim Ajatmam Kim Karma Purushottama, Adbhutam Chikim Proktam Adidaivam Kim Uchite. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. So, we are now beginning the 8th chapter, the Bhagavad Gita as it is. This 8th chapter is entitled Attaining the Supreme. It is about the process by which one, be he a yogi of the mystic variety or any other kind of a yogi, devotee, or whatever, may attain the destination of the Supreme Personality of God. Because after all, the whole point of Bhagavad Gita is to allow the conditioned soul the opportunity to come back to the spiritual abode and surrender to Krishna. So after Arjuna was instructed by Krishna about attaining full consciousness of him in devotional service in the last chapter, he's now asking some very pertinent questions. Questions which are very important for the understanding of a devotee in Krishna consciousness. And this verse is the first part of his question. The next verse is the second part of his question. And from that point on, Krishna will explain in this 8th chapter all different answers to these questions so that Arjuna may get a full understanding of what is what. After all, that is the position of the teacher, of the guru, to explain to the disciples what is what. Acharyamam Purusham Veda. It is described that he who has acharya knows what is what. In other words, he's not bewildered by the material nature. He knows what is truth. He knows what is fiction. He knows the differentiation between the two. How to act, how to live. He knows everything, in other words. So, Arjuna is saying, he's questioning. Kim's question word means what? Kim Tat Brahma. Now, to start off, this question is a very big question. What is Brahman? That is not a small question. It's a huge question, which has answers throughout the entire... What's wrong?
Sometimes here, sometimes not.
Sometimes here, sometimes not. Maybe it's your plug, your wires. You have problems, anyone else? Problems? Problems? Problem or no problem? No problem. Huh? No. It's good. So, the question as to what is Brahman is a big, big question. For example, The Vedanta Sutra starts off with an aphorism. An aphorism means a teensy little verse. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. An absolute truth, but in a very small form. Sutra form, that is. Ata means now. Ato means therefore. Brahma refers to Brahman. And Jigyasa, simple meaning. Now is the time, therefore, to understand what is Brahman. He says now, Vyasadeva, who compiles this Vedanta Sutra, because now we're in the human form of life. And now we have gone through so many different processes to come to the point of realizing the absolute truth. In other words, to come to studying Vedanta Sutra, you had to already go through the Vedic sacrifices. You had to already go through the principles of purification in holy places by taking baths, etc. You had to already go through the processes of worshipping the Lord by yogic practices. Now you are at Vedanta. Anta means the end. Veda means knowledge. Vedanta means the end of all knowledge. Now you've gone through all of the different karma kanda principles in the Veda for fruitive activities, for attaining heavenly planets. You've gone through the various jnana kanda, fruitive, speculative, activities. Now you're at the point of Vedanta, the final end. What is the real knowledge of Vedic prescription? Vedanta. Now, therefore, you, a human being who's progressed so far, you have the opportunity to understand what is Brahman. Therefore, Jigyasa, you should inquire into Brahman. Ask the question, what is Brahman? Now, it seems as if that is the end of the verse, yes? Now, therefore, ask what is Brahman. Simple, no? No. Then, at that point, for instance, Ramanujacharya, in his commentary, takes about 80 pages to discuss what is that Brahman that Vyasadeva is talking about. And he discusses it from all different angles of vision, all different points of view, from the Veda, from the logic, from grammar. He just explains it up and down and all around from all over different points of view. Just this one point, this one word, Brahman. So when a question is asked, what is Brahman? Because that is also a Vedanta Sutra. The Vedanta asks, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Arjuna is asking, Kim Tat Brahma? So actually what Arjuna is doing, he is asking about Vedanta. What is knowledge? What is the goal of knowledge? What is the point of knowledge? What is Brahman? Brahman means, after all, the spiritual nature. Of course, what that spiritual nature might be is different according to different persons' opinions. The impersonalist class of man may think Brahman is simply the all-pervasive feature of the absolute truth. We find amongst learned transcendentalists, they understand the absolute truth in three features. Vedanti tat tat vedas, tat jnanam advayam, Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti, Shabjite. The learned transcendentalists know that there's only one substance called Brahman. One supreme substance. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. However, for understanding, we understand it in three features in order to correctly discriminate when we speak between the different aspects of Brahman. Brahmaneti, Brahman. Brahman means Brahman. That all-pervasive effulgence, Brahmajyoti. Or the impersonal aspect of the Supreme. Even this whole energy here is Brahman. Paramatmeti, Paramatma. The Supreme Lord who is situated in everyone's heart. and Bhagavani, Bhagavan. That supreme form, the supreme personality, the source of all existence, who is the supreme absolute truth, the possessor of all opulences. Bhaga, Bhagavan means he who possesses all opulences. So, these features of the absolute truth are there. Now one may ask, if there's only one supreme absolute truth, why bother describing different features? It's all one. Therefore, there should not be, by logic, different features at all. But no, not true. In fact, when we speak of the one Brahman substance, we do not mean formless or featureless. Just like we may talk about one category called man. That's a category of being, as opposed to insect, fish, plant, beast, bird, man. He's a different category completely. Now within that category of man, there are subdivisions. Man and woman. Male and female. Now, would anybody in his right mind say, it's all one. We don't make any distinction between male and female in our speaking or action. No, nobody thinks like that. Furthermore, there are more subdivisions. There are bodies that are whitish, some are reddish, some are tan, some are black, some are yellow. Amongst human beings, bodies have different colors. Furthermore, there are some who are of this nationality and some that nationality. Somebody's Chinese, somebody's African, somebody's European, somebody's American, somebody's South American, somebody's Indian, Japanese, whatever, all different categories of man. And amongst them, all different men, women. There are further other categories. We can go on mentioning them. It's all obvious, you know this already. All the different categories of the human being. So, the human beings are varied, but they are one category. Human. Man. We are the species of man, the family of man. Now, we cannot say, so we are all one species, man. Therefore, we are all one. Therefore, we're all the same. This is not good logic. You can't say we're all the same just because we are the same category. You can't say all bugs are the same because they're all bugs. You can't say all birds are the same because they're all birds. And even if they looked alike, they're not the same. Strictly speaking, no one thing is ever completely equal to another thing. They may be equivalent as far as their value goes, but no one thing can be equal to another. Because one thing is in one place at one time, another thing is in another place at another time. Even if all the birds looked exactly alike, which they don't, still one bird's flying over here and another bird's flying over there. They're different. So, everything within the creation is different from everything else within the creation. That is just the law of existence. Nothing is exactly the same as anything else. So, Brahman cannot be understood as simply all same. Because here, even those learned scholars and personalities know that immediately we have a difference between Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Brahmeti Paramatmiti Bhagavaniti Satita. Brahman refers to this all-pervasive oneness. But even that all-pervasive oneness is filled with variety. This is also Brahman. But it's Sav Guna Brahman. Brahman with quality of the material nature. There is also the effulgence of Krishna, that's Nirguna Brahman. Brahman without the quality of material nature. That does not mean quality less, because within that all of this is existing. The Brahman is made of all the living entities. So each and every jiva soul, they are also Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi, I'm also Brahman. You're also Brahman. Even the Mayavadis, they have a phrase which says Tatvamasi. Tatvamasi means, you are that. Now, when they hear that you are that, they think that means that I am Brahman, therefore I am the Supreme. But that's not what it means. Just like if we're talking about the category of man, and I say, you are that, that means you're a man. Does that mean you're all men? That all human beings are you? Or you are all human beings? Of course not, that's absurd. Similarly, you cannot say Tattvamasi means you are Brahman, means you are all of it. And there's nothing outside of you. It just means you are that substance. You are Brahman too. Aham Brahmasmi, I'm also Brahman. Now, the Mayavadis will counter that in the Veda it says that Brahman cannot be divided. Therefore, if I'm Brahman, I must be the whole, because Brahman cannot be divided into parts. Otherwise, you're part of Brahman, you're part of Brahman, you're part of Brahman, so Brahman is divided. But we say Brahman is never divided. The individual soul cannot be divided, no matter what you try to do. He's always existing in his entirety. And we are all part of the Brahman. In other words, the Brahman itself is made up of all us living entities. It is not that it is divided. Its very nature is that it is made of all us part and parcel living entities. We have not divided it. Just like this house was already here with all its rooms. We did not come here and divide it. The space is already divided. We just moved in. The space already existed. It was already divided. Similarly, by the very nature of Brahman, it comes already divided. The living entities, the Paramatma. But although they're all divided, they're not divided, because we are dealing with one supreme personality of Godhead with different features, that's all. It is the one absolute truth, but known in its variety. That's not division. That is just the fact of existence. That's just the way it is. The Mayavadis think that if you want to talk about individual souls, then you must talk about chiseling out parts of the Brahman and making them separate. But what they don't understand is we're eternally separate. Krishna says it, Mamayavamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. All the living entities everywhere within this world are eternally my parts and parcels. Eternally, sanatana. We're all Krishna's parts and parcels, eternally. So it is not a question of being divided. It is that way by nature. So we don't have to divide Brahman in order to produce the living entities. But rather, the living entities, in their varied individual forms, are Brahman. And the totality of all living entities, the totality of all matter as well, and all spiritual energy, all of this all together is Brahman, because everything is Brahman. Sarvam kalvidam Brahma. Just some of it is called called Sagun Brahman, which means that Brahman manifesting material qualities, and some of it is called Nirguna Brahman, that Brahman which does not manifest material qualities. For instance, that Brahman energy of the spiritual sky. it does not manifest any material quality. So it's called nirguna. Nirguna does not mean no quality. Because we find that the energy of the spiritual sky has got quality. But that quality is Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha. Eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. A form, eternally that is. Therefore, we are speaking not of quality less, but material quality less. That's what nirguna means. Guna, these words, guna, refer specifically in this sense to the material guna, quality. But when we say nirguna, we are discussing from the point of view of us who are in the triguna, who are under the contamination, Shipir Gunamayar Bhavayar Avi Sarvamitam Jagat. We are mohitam abhijanati, bewildered by the material energy, and therefore we do not understand anything much beyond this material energy. But in fact, when you get beyond the material energy, you are beyond the gunas, therefore it's called nirguna, tvat, without material quality. This does not mean with no quality. It means without material quality. A little bit. Not all the way close? Not all the way. No more. No shade. People who speak. Make like this. So much shade. Very difficult task. So we find that when we describe what is Brahman, the description is basically one which is complex because there'll be so many arguments which are put forward by the Mayavadi class of men, the followers of Shripad Shankaracharya. They have plenty to say. Although they say that all these words are useless because Brahman as a concept is beyond words, they go on talking for a long time. Although they ultimately say it's all words, but they go on speaking and speaking and speaking. The problem is nobody understands what they say. Therefore they can say it's just words. Don't worry if it doesn't make sense. Because you cannot explain the imperceivable by words. Seeing that it's imperceivable, it's also indescribable. Therefore, why do you keep talking? Imperceivable, indescribable means you should just shut up. Why do we have to listen to so much blah blah? Of course, we have challenges like that, and they get very angry. So that's not part of Brahman either. If you are part of Brahman like that, and I tell you to just shut up, you're talking nonsense, you should not be angry. You should not make any response. Because it should not matter if I praise you or I defame you. It's all the same. But they don't think like that. They think, what? How can you say this? Therefore they're nonsense. They don't even believe their own philosophy. As Krishna says in the 12th chapter, who can possibly believe this or accept this philosophy of worshipping the unmanifest, that which is beyond the ability of the senses to perceive or know? This is very difficult. How can you who have senses realize that which is beyond senses? That which has no form, no personality, no existence, outside of just simply being the supreme oneness. How can you perceive the imperceivable? Krishna makes this argument. But he says, yes, it's possible. After long, long, hard struggle, by worshipping that imperceivable supreme Brahman, you will come to understand something about the absolute truth. but at that time you'll also come to devotional service, because ultimately all paths come to Krishna. Krishna says, all paths ultimately come to me. Or everyone is ultimately following Krishna's path in all respects. He's following a process which is created by Krishna. He's reciprocating with Krishna in that way. And ultimately, by coming through the different processes and advancing little by little, he'll come to Krishna more and more. Because ultimately, all processes of austerity, penance, knowledge, charity, activities, whatever, gradually culminate in realization of the Supreme. Maybe it takes thousands of lifetimes. But ultimately, the whole point is to become captured within the process of realization of the Supreme. Now, we're not talking about pure animalistic karmis. We're not talking about just cat and dog. We're talking about those who are within the system of the Vedic culture. Those who are within at least Varnashram Dharma system. They've got to gradually come to the point of understanding the Supreme. It may take some time, but everybody follows that path or process which is established by Krishna anyway. Ultimately, you all follow those paths. Now, of course, one may realize the Supreme or not. One may stay forever, for instance, wrapped up in the material world, if he's like a demon or something like this. He won't get to Krishna, even if the door to Krishna is opened wide open and a red carpet is rolled out. Because he is wishing to forget Krishna eternally. But Krishna helps him to forget him. Again, he's following the path set by Krishna. Krishna helps him become a big demon, even better demon. Helps him to fall down into the lowest species of life. So that person can eternally forget Krishna. Because all paths are emanating from the Supreme, even if you want to forget Krishna. He's situated in everyone's heart. Sarvasya Vridi Sanidishto. I am situated in everyone's heart. And Matsasmitya Jnanam Apohanam Cha. From me come all remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So if you want to be a demon, then you can be a demon. And Krishna will help you to have full knowledge how to do that good. Krishna will help you become a big demon, a good demon. Because Krishna is very merciful. What you want, you can get. If you want to forget him, Krishna will make you forget like anything. And if you want to remember him, Krishna will help you remember him. Everything's based on our desire. And Krishna, being the most merciful Lord, helps us from within. Another feature of Brahman, Paramatma, helping us from within to understand him and surrender to him very nicely. So there are many other questions. What is Brahman? What is the self? Well, we kind of talked about what is the self. The self is, after all, part and parcel of the Supreme. Mamai vamcho jiva loke jiva bhutasana. Mama jiva means my part. Amsha. Amsha means a part of Krishna. We are called Vibhanamsha. Vibhana means separated. Vibhanamsha means we're part of Krishna, but we're separated now. To describe how separated energy is existing, separated from the Supreme, Prabhupada once gave an example. He was at that time drinking a glass of milk. So he said, this milk is the separated energy of the cow. The cow is manifested in this milk. It is the energy of the cow, but now separated here in my glass. So that's a very good example. How the Supreme has his separated energy. You cannot separate milk and cow. They are eternally related. Unless, of course, you are one of these persons like in New York City They had a survey once in a school in Harlem, and they asked the children, where does milk come from? And they thought milk comes from this container in the store. They didn't know it came from a cow. They didn't even know there was such a thing as a cow. But besides, for such ignorant fellows, we all know milk comes from the cow. You can't separate the milk and the cow. But you can, because you can take the milk to another location. In fact, though, the milk is always connected with the cow, because it's the cow's milk. So, we are separated from Krishna because now we are in another location, the material world. But we can never be separated from the Supreme Lord because we are eternally His part and parcel. It's just sometimes we forget that, that's all. We can't become separate from Krishna because we're always His part and parcel. But sometimes we know it, sometimes we don't. When we don't know it, it's said we are in Maya. And when we do know it, it is said we're Krishna conscious. Very simple. A person in Krishna consciousness is he who knows he is not separated from the Supreme. A person in Maya is he who does not know that. Therefore, although we are Vivinamsha, separated energies of the Supreme, we are in fact not separated. It is only our foolish mentality of separatism that makes us think we are in fact separated from the Supreme. But in fact we are not separated because we can never be separated. We can never be separated from the Supreme because we are His eternal part and parcel. We just simply are Krishna's part and parcel. There is no question of being separated from Him. It is not possible. Although we try hard here in the material world, everybody's trying real hard to become separated from Krishna, to forget Krishna. Trying so hard, but it's not possible. You can't be. It's not possible. When you realize that, you're Krishna conscious. Krishna consciousness means you know you can never be separated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because we are His eternal parts and parcels. So, what is the self? There's another description of the self, which is given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jivar, Swarupoi, Krishner, Nichada. Krishner Tatasta Sakti, Veda Ved Prakash. Very simple definition of what is the self, and yet a very the bottom line basic definition, which is the real point of Krishna consciousness. Jiva Swarupoi. The Jiva is his eternal form, Swarupa, Rupa, Swarupa, his own form, his eternal form. Krishna Nichada, the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna Das. We are always the Nitya, eternal Krishna Das, the eternal servants of the Supreme Personality of God. Krishna Tatastasha. We are the marginal potency of the Supreme, Veda Ved Prakash, simultaneously one and different with His Lord. Marginal potency means we are fallible living entities. There are the Kshara and Akshara. Those who are fallible and those who are infallible. Akshara means infallible. Kshara means fallible. We are of the category of fallible living entities. Fallible means you can make mistakes. And we've made big mistakes. The biggest one is we're in this material world. That's a big. So, Krishna's energies, Krishna's potencies cannot make that mistake. When they come out of their own desire. So, when the living entity is in this position where he can fall, which means he's not Krishna's direct energy, and he's not the material nature either. The Krishna's direct energy is called his Antaranga Shakti, internal potency. And Maya, the material energy, is called Bahiranga Shakti, means external potency. So we are not just dull matter, or Maya, although we are in Maya. We are not Maya. And we are not the internal potency of the Supreme, the spiritual energy. We're somewhere in between. Why? Because we come under the control either of the internal potency or the external potency, depending on how we act. When we act in a Krishna conscious way, we come under the control of the internal potency. Under the control. And when we act in a nonsense way, we come under the control of the external potency. Internal, external. Both of these are very powerful potencies of the Supreme. And because we are very small, very tiny, really little. In fact, we can't even make such a small size. 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. Teeny. Practically infinitesimal. Because we're so small, we don't have the power to act as we like, or rather be free and independent to act as we like. We must come under the direction of either the internal potency or the external potency of the Supreme. Therefore we are called Tatastha Shakti. But Krishna is Tatastha Shakti. We're Krishna's marginal potency. We're the potency of the Supreme, but we're called marginal. He has three potencies. Actually, he has one potency. Vishnu Shakti Paraprokta. It is one superior energy. But in order to understand it, it is divided into three again. The internal, external, and marginal potency. So we are actually nothing but the potency of the Supreme. We are therefore Beta Beta Prakash, simultaneously one with and different from the Supreme. But we are not the Supreme. Therefore the Self may be understood in this way. One with and different from the Supreme. Simultaneously. That's obviously the perfection of philosophy. To be one with and different from. Simultaneously. There is no other status. You're either one with something or different from it. There's no other status. You understand? This is the only two states there can be. You're either one with something or different from something. So you can go on arguing for thousands of years. Everything's one. No, everything's different. Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, you cannot argue with it. Because both states are simultaneously existing. You're one with and different from the Supreme at the same time. So who can argue with it? There have been very, very few arguments put forward against the philosophy of simultaneous oneness and difference. Rather, they try to, the Mayavadi class, try to push the difference thing as being Maya. They say when you're one with, then you are in Brahman, you are spiritual. And when you're different with, you're in Maya. And when you become one, the difference drops away. But this is absurd, because if there is only oneness and nothing else, how does this difference get there? Even in illusion. That means there's truth in illusion. There's two things. If one thing drops away, where does it drop to? If it's all one, there's nowhere to drop. And if it's all one, then there's nothing to drop away, because it's all one. They're contradicting themselves at the very beginning of their philosophical discussion. Oneness and difference is the perfect realization. It is the perfect philosophy. There's no better philosophy than this. It is supreme. Supreme philosophy. So, very nice spiritual question. Arjuna wants to know something about the nature of the material existence as well, because if you just simply know some philosophical concepts about the spiritual existence without knowing anything about the material existence, there is a possibility that your knowledge will be incomplete. We should never, for instance, just jump to the spiritual pastimes of Krishna in the 10th canto and not think about the Purusha avatars or the material nature, the material energy, the material elements. No. You should take both things together. Therefore, we also ask, and Arjuna is now asking, Kim Karma? What are fruitive activities? What are these things? Please explain to me the science of acting fruitively. So obviously, Arjuna could avoid acting fruitively. It's not that Arjuna wanted to learn how to be a fruitive actor. Nobody has to learn how to be a fruitive actor. That's born in from birth. It's like all these children, you don't have to teach them how to enjoy their senses. They're experts. They know perfectly well how to be sense enjoyers. They don't need you to teach them how to eat, for instance, and how to like things to eat and not like things to eat. They're experts. You don't have to teach them how to play. You don't have to teach them how to laugh and make jokes and run here and there and enjoy the body. In fact, quite the opposite. You have to teach them how to avoid all of this stuff. So, nobody has to be taught fruitive activities. This is just part of our nature. We just know perfectly well fruitive activities. It's just where we're at. So Arjuna is obviously not asking the question so that Krishna can teach him how to enjoy fruitive activities. He wants to know what are fruitive activities so he can avoid them. Obviously. And Adibhutam. Now, we know the Adidaiva. That's also part of the question. Adhyatma. These three things Arjuna is asking in this verse. Adhyatma means the self, things pertaining to the self. Or you can also think of it in terms of the mind and the body as well, because Atma refers both to mind, body, and self. Also desire, consciousness, and conviction. But in this sense, Arjuna wants to know all of these basic descriptions of what is the Atma. Then there's the Adibhuta, that which refers to the elements of the material nature, and Adidaiva, the devas, the demigods, who are controlling various aspects of this material nature. So the three aspects of the material existence are included by Arjuna in these questions. Adibhuta, what are the elements? What is this material manifestation? How does it work? How does it act? How does it cause us to become entangled? Because the Maya, the material energy, is expert at entangling the living entity through the agency of its material ingredients. Just like, for example, eating. The material energy knows how to capture us, bind us up with good tasting things. Thus we become bound up. We cannot free ourselves from the attachments that Maya presents in this way. So, it's good to know about the material ingredients so you can avoid these attachments. In Adidaiva, one should know about the demigod, because one should know who's the controller. Not supreme controller, but subordinate controllers of this material manifestation. And when one knows about the subordinate controllers of this material manifestation, then he knows also how not to get in their way. How also to understand what they are doing, why they are doing, and not just worship them either. Sometimes people become bewildered and they start worshiping demigods for the sake of getting some fruitive results. Get money, get position, get a nice home, get a nice wife, get a nice this and that. So they worship demigods to get fruitive results. This is also not good. This is also to be avoided. So Arjuna is very cleverly and properly asking the right question. But he's asking the right questions to who? Purushottama. Kim Karma Purushottama. Purusha Uttama. Uttama means topmost. How does that word get broken down? Well, Tama means darkness or ignorance. Ut means beyond. So, Uttama means beyond the darkness of ignorance. And Purusha means person. Now, Uttama, although it is broken down into those two words, in fact the usage is that it means supreme. Uttama means over everything else. Tama in this sense would refer to everything beneath. So Uttama means the topmost. So Purushottama, Purusha Uttama, in Sanskrit there's called sandhi, where the words are combined by special rule. So when the A and the U are connected, that turns to O, and the words are connected. Therefore Purushottama, which is Purusha Uttama. So Purushottama, Purusha means person, Uttama means topmost. Arjuna is asking the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's not asking just anybody his opinion. He's asking Krishna, what is the fact? Because whatever Krishna says, that is fact. Even by his very decision, that becomes fact. Even if formally it was not fact. Whatever Krishna decides, that is fact. Whatever Krishna wants, that is reality, that is existence. It's like, for instance, Krishna was pleased with Sudama Brahmana. Although formally there was no nice house for Sudama Brahmana to live in, desired that Sudama shall have a nice place to live. And boom, there was a palace, and his wife, who was old and skinny, became very beautiful. In fact, Sudama couldn't even recognize her. And he couldn't believe how this had all happened. Boom, all of a sudden. He thought he was in the wrong place. Somebody took away his house or whatever, he didn't know. Because the very determination of the Supreme is a fact. Simply by his desire, everything becomes manifested. That is the Supreme. For us, we've got the desire, then we've got the work, thinking, feeling, willing. Then we got to, do something to accomplish, and maybe, if fate is on our side and our karma is there, we can accomplish something. Yes, maybe. Generally, it takes many times to succeed. That is the nature of this world. So Arjuna is asking many very nice questions. The questions themselves imply nice answers. So, as we go through this 8th chapter, more and more, we will find out all of the different aspects of the spiritual existence and expand our knowledge very nicely according to these questions which Arjuna has asked for our benefit. Are there any further questions on the questions? Yes.
What is actually the difference between internal potency and marginal potency? Because we are living entities, and also for internal potency, is personified.
No. Internal potency means without defect. We are now in material bodies. We are under the illusion of Maya. Maya is external potency. Therefore, how can we be internal potency? Isn't it?
Yes.
Internal potency can never be covered by Maya. So how can you be internal potency? Because you have the tendency to be covered by Maya, you're called detached, marginal.
What about these nitya interceders? They are internal potency.
They act like the internal potency. Those personalities who never fall, they are of the Shakti Tattva, energy of the Supreme.
I don't understand what does it mean that you never separated you from the Supreme Lord, that you never separated. What way we are never separated from Krishna?
It means that just like you are the daughter of a mother and father. Now you are here. They are somewhere. But they're always your mother and father. Can you avoid that? Can you be anything else than the daughter? You may be a bad daughter. You may be an ungrateful daughter. You may be just rotten to the core. But you are daughter nonetheless, is it not? Can you be anything else? No. Therefore, that's an example of never separated. In fact, same exact way, we are part and parcel of the Supreme. We are in fact never separated from the Supreme. But by our consciousness, heart, we've separated ourselves from the Supreme. But in fact, we're not separate. After all, He's sitting there in the heart too. You may run all you like. Supreme runs right along with you. He can run faster than you. It's like sometimes people think they're going to run away from the Krishna consciousness movement, right? They're going to run away from Krishna. They don't know, they're running away, but Krishna's going with them. And He's also telling them, go left, go right, here, run down this street. Yes?
But you mentioned something about demons who never go back to Krishna. Are there such demons that they actually never, ever go to the
Maybe you won't believe me, so I'll read Krishna's words. From the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where they just, by Krishna Himself, He says, here we go. Oh, how terrible. Chapter 16, text 19 and 20. Tanaham dvishatakuran samsareshu naradamam shipami ajasham ashubam asurishva eva jonishu. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, I perpetually, you know what perpetually means? Always, forever. Cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. Ajasham. Shipyami, Ajasham. Krishna says, I put them always. Next verse. Asurim yonim apana mudha janmani mam aprapyaiva konteya tato yant adamam katim. These are heavy words. Attaining repeated birth amongst the species of demoniac life, O son of Kunti, such persons can never approach me. Mam aprapyaya vakantiya. Mudha, janmani, birth after birth, mudha. Gradually they sink down to the most abominable type of existence. Condemned destination. The end, the finished. Why? Because they like it. In the Vedanta Sutra, Baladev Vijabhushana, who's just simply an incarnation of an associate of Lord Chaitanya, who heard Lord Chaitanya speaking the commentary on Vedanta Sutra to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and took birth as Baladev Vijabhushana just to reveal Lord Chaitanya's commentary called Govinda Bhashya. In that Govinda Bhashya, it is stated that the Supreme Lord places such persons into the position of these bugs. Now you know these bugs who are born in the early evening, they fly around the light all night long, and in the morning, boom, they die. So the way it works is they fly around the light, then just before the morning is coming, they have sex. Then they produce some more bugs, and then they die, boom. The other bugs take their birth by the evening, and then they fly around the light all night long, have sex, and boom, die the next morning. So in that particular cycle, such demoniac persons continuously are taking their birth and rotating again and again. It's a great way to forget Krishna. You fly around the light, you're completely blinded, just flying around the light, then you have sex. After all, what better existence is there than that? And then you die. Heavy stuff, huh? Yes.
Kad se veli da smo vojni djedoći Krišne, šta se misli kada se govori da se neki stapaju s bramama?
Stated that we are separated parts of Krishna. What does it mean when it's said that we are merging with
That some are merging.
Nobody's merging into Brahman. There's no such thing as merging into Brahman. Merging into Brahman is completely fictional. It does not exist. Simply, you can temporarily attain the platform of having lost externally your ability to perceive because of being blinded by the Brahman effulgence, and thus one seems to enter into Brahman. But that state is just like a green parrot flying into a green tree. The tree is there, the parrot is there, but because the green parrot flies in a green tree, you can't see him anymore. So he does not merge with the tree, because as soon as the parrot gets hungry, he flies out again, goes somewhere else. But it just seems that way, externally. Similarly, you cannot merge. But because you are also Brahman, and you are within Brahman, it may seem that way. But the individual existence never stops. Therefore, after due course of time, one falls back down again from that Brahman position, and enters back into the material world of repeated birth and death, and takes up some role as a philanthropist or a charitable person, or one who makes schools or hospitals or something like this.
We are always afraid of this, that maybe we will not be able to stay in Sankirtan for whole life because of heavy mentality. Does it mean actually that we are not enough sincere, and that we
What else is there to do? Just like, for instance, if you have to cook for the devotees who go on Sankirtan, that's also Sankirtan activity, supporting the Sankirtan. One who's actual devotee only has one engagement, preaching. So how can you ever have anything separate?
I mean, it's what he moves.
Yes, that's also very nice, but you can always do that. Maybe you don't do it 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Maybe you do it 2 days a week, 52 weeks a year. But you can always do it. If one wants, no problem. Now the problem comes when the mind says, no, anything but that. Give me death. Then you can know you're in Maya. At that point one has to start doing all the things that one normally does to get out of Maya. Did I answer the question? Yes.
Sad mi meditira, šta mora učenik sa svoje strane učiniti da bi dobio tu milost u životu?
Spiritual master can do this, the disciple surrender. So what should the disciple do from his part to the disciple?
What?
What should the disciple do from
No, what's the first part?
the first part is that spiritual master can do the disciple surrender.
What do you mean? What does that mean?
Can make disciples surrender.
Surrender, yeah.
Spiritual master cannot make disciples to surrender. He doesn't have his machine gun. Now you're going to surrender. What? No? Maybe he sometimes takes out his club. It's a very nice club. Beat you on the head with it. Maybe sometimes, if you're lucky. But spiritual master cannot force you to surrender. He can try to convince you to surrender. By giving all kinds of arguments this way, that way, the other way, that you should not remain rotting in the material world, but rather you should try to get out of the material world and surrender to Krishna. That he can do. Now whether or not you do that, that's up to you. You get everything. We give you everything. The whole process, all facilities, everything. Hand to you. Take. But if you say, no, I don't want it. So what can we do? We have a saying, you can bring the horse to water, but you cannot make him drink. If the horse, this is a typical American thing, if the horse doesn't want to drink water, then he doesn't drink. You can stick his head in the water, but he won't open his mouth. He's not interested in drinking. So similarly, we can give you everything in Krishna consciousness. You don't want to take, what can we do? Therefore, your only responsibility is just take what we're given. That's it. Not only take the water, but take the nectar drink and the rasgulas and all the other. Maybe you cannot make rasgulas so well. Take prasadam. Take the programs. Chant Hare Krishna. Read these books. Then becoming purified will go on. So all we can do is take the club and what more can we do? Then we can give the rose. Sometimes spiritual master hands you a rose. When he does that, look out. Look out. Because it generally means you're in big Maya. If spiritual master has to hand you the rose, that means you're in big Maya. You're in such big Maya that he's worried. Therefore he will praise you. Oh, how nice you are. How wonderful you're doing. Here, take this rose. Otherwise, normally, spiritual master's business is chastisement. He's an expert fault finder. Spiritual master is meant to find all the faults in you and help to purify them.
It is said that the living entity can develop their relationship with Krishna from servitor to friendship or to parent lover. And it is also said that we are eternal relationship with Krishna. And how is this?
But you do not, it's not that you become a servant or a friend of Krishna and then later on you decide you don't like that and you become something else. It means while you are progressing in the stage of surrender, you go through these various platforms of purification. And when you become situated in the one which is yours, then you stop going through, and you just purify yourself, and then you enter into the relationship.
This is happened here in the earth?
Yeah. Unless you're so spaced out that things are going on.
This means this depends on the time. It depends on the time. Maybe if one got a longer life, maybe he will.
It's not going to do with time.
No. For example, if one lives a short time and in the short time.
Heavy mental speculation. I mean, heavy mental speculation. Yes, go ahead. If one lives a short time, he can't advance to his regulation, then he can't go back to Godhead, right? Excuse me, I just want to get my club full. Not finished yet. Okay, go ahead. It's alright, don't worry.
If someone
Speculate. Go ahead, everyone. Sorry. Don't mind me.
If someone hard try to purify.
Oh, to purify.
Yes.
To purify means no speculation. Yes, go on. Good, okay. Excellent. Yes.
Najveći demoni po svojoj pravoj prirodi sluge Krišne, zar oni se ne vraćaju nazad u svoj prvobitni položaj sluge misije? Kad tad?
Is it not so that sometimes go back to God?
Sometimes.
Demons?
Sooner or later.
Demons are dedicated to not serving Krishna. And although it is everybody's constitutional position, some simply refuse to accept that. Maybe, someday, they might get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Maybe. But if they're really expert, they can even avoid that by just going to different universes when Lord Chaitanya is about to So for a dedicated demon, he can avoid forever. Never means never. But maybe. I don't know. Krishna said, like that. What's that word? Ajashabam. There we go. Shibami. Ajashabam. Ashubam. Never. Aren't you glad you're not a demon? The demons are very glad they're not devotees.
Neće ti demoni postepeno izgubeći svoj demonski mentalitet. Postepeno, vremenom.
So that the demons will gradually lose their demonic mentality. Gradually.
Mnogo života.
After many lifetimes.
Why? You think demons feel sorry for what they do? They like being demons.
Samo isto s prirodom.
No, they just go have more sex. And if they're dying, they don't care. They just get another body and go on having sex.
It's not authentic, same or different in Vedic or Western culture.
All logic is basically the same. All logic means there are statements with ands and ifs and elses and things like this. All logic is logic. It's just, that's the way it is. It's just a question of what is your basic premise and how you're going to move forward from that basic premise. But all logic is the same. It's just a science called logic.
Haven't Vedic logic and Western logic.
Western logic came from Vedic logic. The only problem is the Western peoples are not very logical.
I'm not lecture, I heard you say that devotees are eternal. What? Like I was thinking in relation with these demons. These demons are never in any lifetime being devotees. And if we are one lifetime devotees, can we turn into such demons?
No. No. You can imitate demons for a while. You cannot become a demon. More or less you just become a fool if you want for a while. But you can't. You can't give up Krishna completely.
And those who are conditioned souls, like we develop, because it is said that in this movement of Lord Chaitanya we can develop conjugal, up to the conjugal love. But is it so that even those who are conditioned souls, they can, are amongst the conditioned souls those who can develop conjugal?
Any rasa is the same. Any conditioned soul can go to whatever rasa he's qualified or desires.
Because I heard once that those who have conjugal relationship, they never fall down.
That sounds like an unsubstantiated statement. And neither is it possible to understand the whys or wherefores of falling down. Whys and wherefores, you know what that means? It means to understand the subject matter about. Yes.
Maharaji ispričao najdobrniju priču o povratku duhovne duše, kako se duše vraća na Bogu, pa nešto o tome još podijeliti. Kaže da je kao zadnji na kraju gdje treba izaći Matnog sveta da je sreo najpesimicijenu koja je poslala družiti sa njim. Pa ste baš kroz razne planete, više planete. Ima nešto o tome, o tom povratku duhovne duše Bhakti Charu, he Heidelberg, he gave a lecture about Gopkumar, about return of the soul.
What's the question?
The question is it so that every soul goes like this, like that, and also that he met personified Maya on the edge of the universe, of the limit?
All the souls there have different histories and how they're progressing back home on the path of Godhead. That particular soul went through all of the places, just to give Sanatana Goswami a chance to describe it all to you.
Da
What's the question?
Does it mean that somebody don't goes to the universe to those higher planets? Because I feel also in my lecture.
You may or you may not go up through the higher planets. It depends on your desires. We would recommend you don't go through the higher planets. It takes too long. Ask in English first, because maybe it's not necessary to translate the question.
Does it also mean, I heard that in the time of death, that there are many images from the past lifetimes. Does it mean that also for devotees in the time of death, you will see all the sins that we did?
If you are factually a devotee, and if you are about to go back to Godhead, at the time of death, you don't have to experience the same suffering conditions that the materialists experience at the time of death, such as having to view all of their sinful reactions or activities and experiencing Yamadutas coming, etc. But rather one just simply transfers himself to the spiritual sky, where he's seeing Krishna. One more question. Who's got the very best question? We'll ask him, because he didn't ask before. Not because his question's the best.
May demons chant sing the holy name?
Sure, why not? We're not stopping them. But they never will. Not even in a joke. They're determined. Consciously determined. They know who they are rebelling against. That's why they're called demons.